Testing, 1, 2. Can you hear me? Testing. Okay, you know what? I see it coming up on here. Testing, so I'm assuming that you can hear me.
Hello.
All right, welcome everyone. Jen, can you hear me all right?
I can hear you, Tom. You can hear me?
How about now, Jen?
Hello.
All right, welcome everyone. Jen, can you hear me all right? Thanks for standing by for 1 minute while we get Jen's audio configured. Saul, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you. Are you able to hear me?
I hear you fine. Yeah, it's great.
Excellent.
We'll get Jen's audio plugged in. We'll get things kicked off in about a minute. In the meantime, feel free to jump in with any questions in the LinkedIn chat, and we will get to it in a bit. We'll have Jen starting out with the intro if we can get the audio going.
Uh-oh. Now we lost our camera.
Yes. Welcome to 2022.
Uh-oh. Looks like I was just made the host. Well, everybody, we'll wait till Todd joins us back because he's actually the one running this, and not my thing. I don't know how to do this offhand. But just an FYI, if you do have any topics that you want us to cover, please put that into the comments, and we will get to those topics, and you can ask your questions there as well. Jen, I can see you, but we lost Todd.
Oh no, Tom. Yeah, there he is.
Tom, there we go. I'm sorry.
I'm back.
There we go. Okay, he's
All
back.
right.
Okay.
And Jen, I can
so
hear
sorry. You can.
No, we're good. We're good.
Oh, you guys, I'm so sorry. I tested this earlier and it worked. I was just on another meeting and different software, I suppose.
Yes. Take us away, Jen.
All right. So good morning and happy Tuesday, everybody. Welcome to the Konik Blueprint Podcast, second live AMA or Ask Me Anything that we're streaming live here on LinkedIn. Clearly it's live. Our guest today is Saul Rosenbaum. Saul is a registered engineer who has his bachelor's and master's degrees in mechanical engineering from Columbia University in New York. He has certifications from Green Building Initiative as a Green Globes professional and the Association of Energy Engineers as a certified energy manager. Saul is the owner of SR Engineering and Consulting, LLC, which supports the CRE world with energy engineering, green loan compliance, PCA review, and ghostwriting. Saul has a passion for helping younger engineers and writes a popular blog for engineers titled The Engineering Mentor, which you can find at engineeringmentor.com, where he dispels advice to young engineers. Saul, thank you for being with us today.
My pleasure. Really appreciate you inviting me here to talk about some of my interests and help that next generation.
Yeah, it's awesome. It's an honor to have you here, Saul. We're really excited to dig into your knowledge and your insight. And we already have a great question from Brandon that we will get to. He asks, we'll get to this in a minute, but he asks a really good question. How is college beneficial anymore? Love this question, but we'll definitely get to that, Brandon. Thank you. And anyone else who has questions, anything to do with career advice for employees and professionals on the management leadership side, any questions to learn more insight into what candidates are looking for, what they want, what the job market looks like overall, definitely chime away and we'll get to the questions. So thank you, Saul. To start out with, can you tell us a little bit about your background and SR Engineering and Consulting? Tell us a little bit about that.
Absolutely. Well, as Jen mentioned, I have my background in mechanical engineering, and I went right into the energy efficiency field directly out of engineering school. And I've essentially been in that same field for the past 20 years, although I have sort of weaved my way back and forth into different areas of the field. About 10 years ago or so, I broke off, did my own consulting within the commercial real estate due diligence industry, still working on a lot of those energy efficiency projects, but it was really within the mortgage finance world and green loans, those types of things. So really the same work, but just with a different focus and a different client. I actually went back for a little bit full time as things got a little overwhelming. That's sort of the consultant's dilemma, where you always want to get more work, but then it falls on your shoulders a little bit too heavy. Due to various things with Corona, I'm still working for some of those companies, but I ended up opening my consulting once again. But I definitely have a focus on scaling, in a much smarter manner and hiring other people and really working with others as well, so that I can grow, but it's not completely on my shoulders at this time.
Yeah, that's great. Fantastic background. Especially for this conversation, will be very, very insightful for a lot of people across the spectrum of engineering and manufacturing and architecture. So thanks again for being here. In addition to all that, you also have a very popular blog called the engineeringmentor.com. Engineeringmentor.com. Can you tell us a little bit about that and how that got started for you?
Right. This is one of those things where I've been helped along in my career by amazing mentors, by amazing supervisors who have really helped guide my career. And there's no question that I would not be where I am today if it was not for them. And I honestly thought this was the norm, that everybody sort of had those people. Of course, not every one of your coworkers is going to be helpful. Not every one of your supervisors is necessarily going to be as good as another. But I always had this impression that everyone had that guidance. And in addition to that, I also have a lot of engineers within my family. So I was really able to navigate the field pretty well. And it really helped me get to where I am today. About, 10, 15 years ago, I was talking to some other engineers, and I mentioned something about my mentor telling me something, and they were like, wait, what? It sort of caught me off guard. I'm like, what do you mean? Not the norm? And that was the time that I found out that, no, it really is not the norm. A lot of people don't have that guidance. They don't have someone to turn to for questions. At that point, I was already helping just the younger engineers within my company. I did try to branch out a little bit. And it was about 5-6 years ago that I kind of took it a step further, created the website, The Engineering Mentor, really to help reach out to other people, have a newsletter with that. I started last year actually with some small courses, but intention is really just disseminate information, make sure almost all of it is entirely free, because I really just want to help out the next generation of engineers as my way of paying it forward for all of the senior engineers that helped me get to where I am today.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Great. Thanks for getting us up to speed on that. We have a couple questions that we had for you, but at first I would love to get to Brandon's question. I think it's such a timely question. He asks, how is college beneficial? He just added a little bit of background. He said,
okay,
a little background on the question. I started a business out of high school and sold it 6 years later. Now I find it difficult to secure employment that aligns with my experience without, in my opinion, a pointless degree. And my I guess add to the question too is in light of education becoming so expensive and increasingly so, and so many positions at the engineering level require a 4-year degree. In the meantime, we have so many new technologies that someone with a very strong interest and desire to learn the skills that are required for job, you name it, can learn the core skills in a relatively short amount of time, much, much less than 4 years and however many hundreds of thousands of dollars in student loan debt that you end up with afterwards, without the guarantee that'll solve all of your career issues. You still have to work really, really hard to move on after that degree. So really back to Brandon's question for you and Jen too. Feel free to jump in. How is college beneficial anymore?
Right. So I think that this is sort of a two-part question. To some extent, no, you don't need a degree to actually do a job, as long as you are getting the training. You could have some sort of internship type of program, some sort of apprenticeship. If that were to exist, I think a lot of jobs could be done without, without the college degree. Now, the other side of that is that, especially in the engineering world, the college degree has become, it's this 4-year degree in the US, 3 to 5 in other countries. There's definitely a lot of stuff in there that I don't use on a regular basis. That, there's courses that I took the course, I never saw it again, except for one of my licensing exams. And the problem with kind of condensing that, because at least, if you could say, hey, let's make this a 2-year degree instead of a 4-year degree, a lot less onerous. The problem is that we don't know what we're doing down the road. So I think that, long story short, there are some jobs where, unfortunately, you do have to have the degree. I know that in the engineering world, you probably won't get a job without it. So that's it is a bit of a catch-22. The one thing that I would tell Brandon and people like that who have experience that bringing to the table is that if you're going to apply for a job through the standard methods, or actually the accepted methods of online applications, you might have a harder time, because once they see, oh, you don't have a degree, that's like an automatic no. Whereas if you go on a more networking approach and people get to know you and really see, oh wait, this guy's experience is really, one-to-one matches up with what we're looking for. Maybe we can work something out. I think you might have a little bit more luck, kind of using that angle as opposed to the online application angle.
Yeah, really, really good. Jen, anything to add on that?
My thoughts about the 4-year degree for engineers, because there's also 2-year degrees for engineering, and so why a 4-year degree? From an employer's perspective, let me play devil's advocate a little bit here. You have an employee who's not only really focused on the engineering of it and the technical of it, but they see somebody who's taken classes in generals, right? Your English classes, your writing classes. Maybe you got brave and took a speech class. And so you're more of a well-rounded candidate and then potentially more well-rounded incoming employee.
Right. No, I definitely agree that having a well-rounded employee, having them have knowledge in other areas is important. Even, some of my engineering classes, it's like thermodynamics and heat transfer really, that's the basis for a lot of the energy efficiency work that I do, even if I'm not working on them specifically. So the knowledge definitely helps out there. But I think as a system, I think we're starting to see that just the cost of the degree and the way it's set up, it is a, sort of this goalpost that people have to get past, but it's not always the best system there. So yeah. I would definitely advocate if we could try to change it to some degree. I think that would be a benefit to a lot of people.
Right. And you touched on something here. You talked about networking and how that is going to be a really beneficial step to somebody. And I know this is something that you spend a lot of time in your blog going over for engineers. But let's talk a little bit about if somebody's never networked, they're just getting on LinkedIn because they need it now, because it is a critical component for recruiting right now, at least in our world. How does somebody start? How do they go about networking? What are the do's and the don'ts?
Right. I think the biggest do is to be yourself, not to, be this fake personality, and not to be afraid to put things out there. Because a lot of engineers, when they start networking, they only network with engineering topics in mind. So therefore, somebody would come to me only talking about energy engineering. They would only talk about building envelopes and different technologies that are related to that, because they see, oh, that's related to the work that I do. However, real connections are made with those. Those are not outside of the realm, but the real connections are also made when you see somebody has some of the same interests or the same hobbies as you have. So if you're putting out there these hobbies, let people know about these other things, these other extracurricular activities that you have. Let your profile be a little bit more personal. People can really connect with you. The other thing that's a big do, it's a do and a don't at the same time, is be a giver and not a taker. Don't start asking people for things coming up. If somebody doesn't know you, they're pretty unlikely to help you out and go out of their way. They might pass along some quick information, but not really going to help you. If you're just a giver, if you come on these platforms and you start conversations, you join somebody else's post within the comments, you're going to find that they're going to be much more appreciative. You're making that connection with them. Then down the road, you can help. And I think just one last point, that's also sort of a down the road idea, is networking is not something that should be done right when you need it. It's something that should be done starting now. Wherever you are, just start now. This way, when you do need it, you have it prepared. It'll be a much higher quality network than if you just decide last minute, hey, let me just start calling people and trying to develop that network.
I love that. It's not a transactional action. It's a development action, something that you use for the future.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and I love, Brendan, you chimed in here. Could you elaborate on networking? And you guys just covered it. I would suggest that, Brandon, you are networking right now. You're getting to know us. We're getting to know you through the messages. Feel free after this, reach out to me or Jen, and we'll definitely network with you and get to know you a little bit better and see if we can help in any way from here forward. So thank you for the question, Brandon. It's awesome. Great. Yeah, thank you.
And
if anybody else has any other questions, feel free to drop them in the box. And in the meantime, Jen, I believe you have a follow-up question.
I do. So how would you suggest, we're going to go now to interviewing. We've kind of skipped over applying, but how would you suggest candidates answer interview questions? Specifically, a hot topic right now is compensation. So how should they answer interview questions around that? For example, if the question is, what are your salary expectations? What is your advice to that young engineer?
Right. Well, I think the first step before you even get to the interview is to know what is the fair rate for someone in that position, in that city, at that level that you're applying. Because listen, you might come out of engineering school and say, hey, you know what? I want to make $150,000. And good for you. If you can find that job, just go take it, right out of engineering school. But that's not reality. So you have to know, okay, what are we dealing with here? And then, so there are, I know Glassdoor, I think there's some others, I don't know them offhand, but also talk to people within the industry to find out what is standard. And then also think about what's important to you, because that number is obviously one of the big key things, but also, the work hours, the work. Some places are straight up 9 to 5. They will never call you in the evenings. There are other places that have serious deadlines that are, fairly often occurring, that you're going to be working, 60-hour weeks. The other, and also as well as benefits, what type of jobs you want. So that you want to make sure that you put it all together into that package, but definitely do your research beforehand, and then you can come to them with a number. The tough part here is it is a balancing act, because if you're really desperate for a job, you might be willing to take less, but is that really in your best interest? It might be. Listen, if you can't pay the bills, you take that job and say, hey, I'll stick around here for a year, and that'll be that. But remember, during this whole process of interviewing, they are on their best behavior, treating you as best as they ever will. So if you feel like they're not being fair with you at this point, chances are they won't be fair with you down the road and live up to the expectations that you're having for this job.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, great point. I love that last part. It's all very good way to look at it.
Yeah.
Jen, any more on that point? I have a I guess follow-up question to that, but anything else?
Well, I just wanted to add for engineers who are just getting in the industry to think about, if you're going to come out of college with we're going to just pick on the mechanical engineers right now, because Saul's a mechanical engineer by education. Okay. So if you are an entry level, and this is happening right now, if you're an entry level mechanical engineer who's coming out of college with your bachelor's degree, and you want to go make $80,000, don't apply at the company that's got 15 people. They have a certain specific revenue of which they can pay their employees. If you want to make higher money, you have to look at different industries. You have to look at bigger companies that have the revenue to pay that. I just want people to have realistic expectations, and this is something they're not thinking of right now. I just wanted to add that point.
Right. Yeah. I would also add that if you have, you're looking at Glassdoor, you're looking at one of these things, and you see, hey, this is what the salary is. If you're aiming for the top of the range, you also want to come to them and say, hey, this is why I'm that top candidate. These are the extra skills I bring that really meet what you want, as opposed to somebody who just barely meets the requirements. So certainly play that up, and a lot of that comes back to how much research you have done beforehand, talking to people in that role and saying, hey, what other skills are important for this role that may not necessarily be advertised for the role specifically.
Excellent point.
Really good. So my follow-up question to that, around salary expectations, there's a lot of discussion offline, but obviously I see it a lot online, around putting compensation in the job advertisement. So in the online posting, whether it's on a company's website or in Indeed or the hundreds of job job sites to put the salary range in that versus not. I believe New York City they have an ordinance where any position that's located within the city of New York in Manhattan, employers are required to include their pay in the job advertisement itself. What are your perspectives on that?
Right. Well, it's interesting. I had not heard about New York City. I know Colorado, I believe, has a statewide issue with that. I think it's a good thing because in the end of the day, if you say, hey, I need to, like, Jen mentioned, somebody says, I want to make $80,000 a year. That's not a question of fair or not. That is what you are aiming to get. And if you are going to automatically turn down a job that somebody says, oh, well, listen, the salary is only $50,000. Why should you waste your time going to the interview, going through the process? And also, why should you waste their time? They're going to take the time reaching out to you, connecting with you, and having these interviews when they know that regardless of what they offer, even if they go 10, 15% higher, you have no chance of taking that. And I think it's even worse when somebody has a job and they're sort of looking for other things. I've heard of people taking, using their vacation days because they saw a position, thought it was better, went through 3 interviews to find out it's the exact same thing they were getting paid now, but for more hours. I think it just makes for more transparency, and I really haven't had anyone tell me a good reason why they should not put it out there. Put a range. A range is fine because I understand people come with different skills, but I haven't had anybody give me a good reason why they shouldn't at least put that in there.
Yeah. It's one I could think of has more to do with internal policies, internal budgets. Put an internal employee, let's say any company, let's just say Microsoft. Any employee can look at Microsoft's descriptions and see, as a Microsoft employee, oh, there's a job posted for the exact same thing that I'm doing, but it's 15% higher. That can create internal, maybe a slight headache and work for Microsoft internally, but that doesn't make the reasons to include them any less valid. If that's the case, if you are bringing in a new employee that has equal or less experience than an existing employee, that's an internal discussion that needs to be resolved, right? But yeah, I agree 100% to your point. So it creates so much more efficiencies in the marketplace to just put the salary out there. Not only you get more candidates, you get more engaged candidates, people who feel well qualified and very interested. They're not thinking like, what's the pay? They're going to go through that whole process. They already have a good idea of what that pay range is. And then it's a matter of, okay, how do my qualifications line up to that role in order to get, salary at the top end? Do I need to hit all the bullet points under the requirements to hit that top pay grade? That's part of what the discussion back and forth would be around, not this dance of, oh, how much are you making, or how much are you making now, or how much do you want to make, what would you accept that? If you just put that all out there in the marketplace, just creates a lot more efficiency from my perspective, my opinion.
Right. No, absolutely. Because the fact is, I run a small business. If I'm hiring somebody, I know, hey, listen, this is the range that I can pay someone. If you're going to be doing more work or more efficient work, I'm happy to pay you more. But at the end of the day, I have a range. Like, every company has a range. They're not just shooting in the dark. They know what they have in their budget. So at least share something so people can get, an idea of where you're going.
Yeah. Yep. That's great. Jen, anything more to add on that?
Not right. No, I think we're good. We've got a couple more questions that we can address if you want to.
Absolutely.
One of those.
Yes, reading through them, we have one from Bert and then another LinkedIn user. Bert, with all due respect to your collective points of networking investment, in today's market of professional shortage, recruiters are more transactional than long-term networking in nature. is there interest in learning about the candidate when there isn't a slot to fill?
Can I take this one?
Please.
I'm like bouncing in my seat and ready to go.
Thank you, Bert, for the question.
Bert, that's an excellent question. And my answer to that is absolutely there's value in talking to a candidate who you don't have a slot for. One of our values at our company is investing in people and for the long term. And I think personally, transactional recruiting is really short-sighted. I don't know where you're eventually going to go to work. Are you going to eventually become a client? How can I help you? Can I help you network with one of my clients? Or if I don't have an existing relationship with somebody, can I refer you elsewhere? I think if you put that good in the world, it will come back. Tom, I'm so fired up about this, but I really feel that it really, really, really is how I feel. If you're transactional, you're short-sighted. You need to invest in people. And I'm sorry if that's been your experience. Reach out to me. I'd love to have a conversation with you.
Yeah, I agree 100%. It's certainly Bert's experience is legitimate, and he has had, I'm assuming he's had experiences around that. That definitely is a very real part of professional networking, Bert. So by all means, your question and your background to it is very legitimate. Definitely. Saul?
Right. Yeah, and Jen, I certainly agree with your approach. Bert, I am actually not a networker. I'm not a recruiter. I'm a heavy networker. My outlook is really to think about networking very similar to the way that you would about hurricane prep. You wouldn't, if you see that storm coming in, that's not the time to run to Home Depot and start buying stuff to board up your windows, to start buying water, to start buying supplies. You want to have the network set up, and you want to have connections with people who you can then turn to at some point in the future that you don't really know what that purpose would be specifically. You're just making those connections. I like to call, business friends. So that's the way I network and reach out to people. And there are certainly, as Jen mentioned, there are network recruiters who network in the same manner where they are connecting just for the sake of connecting. They might have a role that they thought was good for you. Turns out, hey, this isn't good, but let's stay in touch because who knows what could come down the pipes. And if you find recruiters like that, those are the type of people you want to network with, and just people in general who network with that, who knows, let's see where it leads attitude. I think you will often have better results in the end.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah, and another user, just to mention in the chat, they'd mentioned they showed up for interviews, and they thought that I would be okay with being paid $13,000 less than someone with my experience. It pretty immediately ended the interview, and I was frustrated because Glassdoor and other sources indicated that they were within my pay requirements. So it's another background story on our previous conversation around compensation and showing that. Just another example of creating efficiency in the market, and just you don't want to what that candidate experienced. They remember it. That experience may have happened 5 years ago, and they remember it crystal clear.
Yeah.
And they know the name of the company that they didn't volunteer with. Please don't need to mention the name of the company, but they know who that is. They probably know maybe even the person that lined up the interview. It's just really, really longer term maybe isn't a helpful experience for that individual.
Right. Absolutely. I think that, listen, if you're talking about, $30,000, $40,000, I understand where there's complete disconnect, but I really don't understand, companies that make these decisions, they go through the whole process and then they just try to shortchange somebody a few $1,000s. $13,000 is sort of like in that, middle ground, but they're wasting their time. If they would have just told this guy up ahead, say, hey, this is what we're offering, he would have realized, okay, sorry, I'm looking for more. It's not worth it. It's not worth my time. Just, I don't get it.
Yeah, absolutely.
How about we shift from, it's going back to the networking question. So many engineers and technical professionals are introverted in this discipline, and they become anxious in a room full of strangers. They're networking. A lot of networking events are at a bar or at a hotel ballroom or whatnot. What are your tips to help people be more comfortable in those moments?
Right. So I think that a lot of it has to do with expectations and also sort of managing your mindset. The first thing to keep in mind is that if you define yourself as an introverted engineer, then you're going to kind of go out there with that. The truth is that most people are, there's the super extroverted people, the super introverted people, and then we're all sort of somewhere in the middle. We have introverted tendencies within certain, places, certain certain events, I should say, where you're in these positions and you just don't feel comfortable. So in that sense, I think change the mindset of thinking that you're completely introverted and just see yourself on this range and try to find that comfortable place. The other part is the expectations. When you go to those big events, if you go in there thinking, all right, here we go, 60 minutes of random people who I don't want to talk to, but this is what the job entails, that can be very overwhelming. If you go in there with the expectation, start small. Say, hey, I'm going to meet 1 or 2 new people. I'll be there for 10 minutes and I'll leave. And then leave. Don't stay, because then you're going to have that bad experience. Just leave. If you don't feel comfortable staying for 60 minutes, build up to it if that works for you, or just continuously go for 10 minutes. Find places that are comfortable. Find some of the events that are a little bit less formal where you can go to and just feel more yourself. I would also recommend go with a friend. If they are more extroverted and more comfortable with those experiences than you are, have them drag you along, because it's a lot easier to sort of be that extra person, join the conversations when you feel like it, but not to have all of the pressure on yourself. The other thing that I have found works a lot with a lot of more introverted engineers is to have some questions or topics in mind. Keep these with you. I had one guy who he would just freeze up. He actually kept a few cards in his pocket with questions. He'd sort of look at them between talking to people. He wouldn't pull them out when he was talking to someone. I think that would probably be a little odd. But he would look at them beforehand, and just as he's walking up to people, and just, okay, keep that question in mind. The more you do it, the more you feel comfortable with it. I think, and one last thing I was thinking about, small talk. A lot of engineers, they just want to go right into a project, right into engineering, and they sort of jump over the small talk, that little chit chat that happens, let's say before a meeting or just when you're catching up with somebody. Like I said before, that you want your profile to be, about you and not just about work. That little chit chat helps make those connections, help people feel more comfortable with you. So don't overlook that. You want to have that little small talk. A lot of engineers look at it, meaningless conversations. That's actually the part of the conversation that really helps build the network and build the connection. So it's not meaningless at all.
And this is simple things, like I can hear people yelling, but what is the question? But for small talk, but I think small talk could be, how is your drive in? Gosh, isn't the weather crazy? Things like that are universal that everybody can talk about.
Right, it can be. And the truth is, it can also be something that is, work related. You can ask them, tell people to go to whatever your engineering association is, go to the local chapter meetings, because that's where you meet people from, very experienced to the new fresh engineers, like a lot of the engineers I work with. You can talk to them and say, hey, what's the craziest project you've ever worked on, or the craziest story you've ever had? This gets them out of a strictly engineering perspective and reminds them about that crazy time they were in some city in the middle of nowhere, their car broke down. It has nothing to do with engineering specifically, but it really helps them lead the way and help guide them. The other thing that has been very useful is to ask people, hey, what's keeping you busy these days? Because it's a personal question where they can then take the reins and decide, okay, I'm going to talk about, my DIY project I'm doing at home, or they can talk about a very specific engineering project that they're working on. So it really helps them lead the way, keep them comfortable, and you don't have to do a whole lot of work to really force, stuff out of them.
I love that. Thank you.
Cool. Really, really good advice for a lot of people, engineers, architects, anybody, anyone.
Yeah,
I know.
sure.
I'm taking notes.
I think we're all doing it. It's especially hard. I think, my perspective, you walk into a room, you're interested in the content. Maybe there's a speaker, but there's a networking social beforehand. And to your point, like if you can bring a friend, it's great. Like maybe there's one or two people that you know, a couple of people that your friends know, and that can be, just a 20-30 minute conversation, meeting the connections. But it is hard. You walk into a room full of people that you don't know, and you walk in, you don't recognize anybody, and the first thing is like, okay, go to the bar. That'll kill some time, and that'll help. And then, right. Okay, you get your drink, and okay, now what happens? Oh, what am I supposed to do now?
But you know what? Even if you're at the bar, if you see somebody getting like an interesting cocktail, just be curious. Be like, hey, that looks like an interesting drink. What is that? Get them talking about something, because you're making a connection. And I think that if you're avoiding, talking to them, if it's not about engineering, you're missing out. And these are the little things. Just there's your in. Hey, what's that little funny colored drink you just ordered? Go for it.
I'm going to add one more point to this. I know we're closing in at time, but it made me think of, so how do you build your network up from there? You could go one at a time, but Saul, to your point, and you mentioned this before, as you talk to people and they're finding out what your interests are, if they know Nancy over there likes the same thing that you do, maybe you've talked about how your kids do Pokemon Go or something, I don't know. And you just happen to know you've talked to her about it too, and her kids do it. You just do it's a great introduction, right? Here's Nancy, her kids do Pokemon Go, isn't that funny? And it's nothing about anything, right? But it's just a conversation starter.
Right. No, absolutely. And I think that to add to that, because somebody can always pass you along to someone else, you shouldn't limit yourself to networking with, a very specific group. I think if you're doing outreach, you're sending emails, or you're looking for somebody perhaps on LinkedIn, I understand having a target demographic that you basically would like to reach. However, if you find someone who's outside of that, they just seem interesting, or you meet somebody in person, don't shy away from the connection because they're not in that demographic, because you really never know. I've had engineers who I told them, I said, listen, if you are looking for a job, everybody should know you're looking for a job. You want to be out there with it. Let everybody know. Don't just reach out to engineers. And it turns out he got a job through the secretary at his church, because he was just talking about what he was doing for the summer. He mentioned that he has an engineering internship, that he's looking for some jobs. And she goes, oh, my brother is in engineering as well. And that was his connection. Whereas beforehand, he would never have even mentioned engineering to this secretary who had, she herself was not in the engineering field. But here she had that connection, and he would have missed that opportunity.
Yeah.
Really good point.
That's amazing. That's great. Well, if anyone has a question, definitely drop it in the chat. We'll move on to another section here of the live podcast. We like to call the lightning round. Quick answers to get to know you a little bit better. Saul, are you ready?
All right. I'm ready.
All right. What are your favorite free time activities?
I definitely like DIY projects around the house. I always try to have something going on there. And also something that I started several years ago was, walking and jogging outside. And that was because, once I started working from a home office, I was a trendsetter. I've been working from a home office for 14 years. I'm not the newcomer from COVID, but there were days where, we started tracking my steps. Like I had a Fitbit at the time, and I realized I could do like 1,000 steps. I wasn't going anywhere. I would go from my bedroom to the office, down to the kitchen to get coffee, and that was it. I would kind of go back and forth between those areas. So I really had a concerted effort to get out. The other thing I like, you see back here, a lot of my nonfiction books. I definitely have a passion for picking up new books and seeing what's out there.
Awesome. That's great. What is your favorite musical artist?
My theory is that once you sort of get a genre in high school, that's it. You sort of never go past that, and you just sort of stick within that. So I listen to Guns N' Roses and Metallica all the time.
Nice.
My wife does wonder how I listen to that really loudly and still concentrate on my engineering work, but I haven't had any issues yet. So it's those two, and then other bands of similar type of bands within that.
Yeah, amazing. I'm right with you with Guns N' Roses and Metallica, probably my top two.
There you go. Excellent.
All right, and then next two, underrated or overrated. So just answer either underrated or overrated. What would you say? Where does Justin Bieber fall in? Underrated or overrated?
That's completely not my genre, so I don't know. But I got to tell you, I would actually say, based on my limited experience, I would say underrated, because I think it's pretty impressive what he's done. He has this notoriety, he has this success. So good for him. I mean, I don't really know exactly all of his stuff, so if he's done anything crazy or wrong, don't blame me for that. But I'll go with underrated, because I think it's pretty impressive that somebody of his age was able to do that.
Yes, yeah. Looking at his early YouTube recordings, just the raw talent behind all the drama and the craziness. It's brilliant. All right, and then the other one, underrated or overrated, the metaverse.
The metaverse. I'm going to go with underrated on this also, because I don't think we really see what it is yet. We don't really know what it is. But to me, I've been working from home for 14 years. So for me, the acceptance of Zoom, the acceptance of, even LinkedIn Live has really been an upgrade for me. I know people who are starting from the point of in-office interactions. It's a bit of a downgrade in terms of those connections. So I look at the metaverse as something that could sort of increase those connections to some degree. We're already working from home. We're already working in remote offices. If we can make those internet interactions more standardized or increase them, I'd say it's a good thing.
Yeah, that's great. Good. Right. And before we wrap up, Saul, can you give everyone ideas on how they can get in touch with you? How do we reach you?
Yeah, I think the best way to reach me, anybody who's here, LinkedIn Live, certainly reach out to connect. One of the things I do recommend is always using the add a note feature, but that you don't have to. You can tell me that you saw me here. Definitely connect with me here on LinkedIn. And especially for the younger engineers and even mid-career engineers, head on over to my website, theengineeringmentor.com. We'd be happy to have you there as well.
All right, awesome.
Thank you so much for joining us today, Saul.
My pleasure. I really appreciate the invite.
Yes. Thank you for being here, Saul. Appreciate everything.
Excellent. Take care, everybody. And that certainly, anybody who wants to reach out and keep in touch, happy to help where I can.
All right. Thank you, Saul. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.
Take care.